Welcome to Attleboro Update. With great local man in need of a kidney receives the gift of life, festivities for the Big Read are in full swing, and partner organization Triborough Youth Theatre showed that
Welcome to Attleboro Update, where you can get the latest in what's going on in the Attleboro area. You can watch all of our content by visiting our website, DoubleACS.com, by downloading the DoubleACS mobile app, or if you have a Roku, you can search for the DoubleACS Roku channel. Attleboro Mayor Paul Heroux has proposed a new ordinance that aims to reduce the use of environmentally harmful products. We spoke with the mayor to get a breakdown of the proposal.
So when I campaigned for mayor for re-election, I campaigned essentially on two things. It was downtown revitalization. We're having a lot of progress there. But I also campaigned on cleaner, greener Attleboro. And there are a number of ways to achieve that, to get to a cleaner, greener Attleboro. One of them is to eliminate the harmful products that commercial businesses often use as a matter of convenience. But there are better, less harmful products that we can and should be using. So generally speaking, going after things that are plastic. Plastics use petrochemicals to produce, and that in and of itself is bad for the environment. It's bad for our air, and disposal of the waste products, when we're making the plastic products, is also very problematic. So from the production of it, but then also the use of these plastic products, they're used in foods and sometimes beverages. The disposal of these products is where we also have more problems. A lot of times these plastic products, plastic or styrofoam, when they're disposed of, they oftentimes end up as litter in the community, or they end up in landfills. Other times they're just burned because recycling programs are not as effective as people might think when it comes to plastic. Plastic and styrofoam takeaway containers and cups and straws is one thing I'm hoping that the City Council will vote, in the positive, to eliminate these things in Attleboro at restaurants. There are cost-effective, environmentally sustainable alternatives. Now, a lot of people might criticize saying, well, paper or compostable stuff, they cut down trees, but trees you can replant and create tree forests, that are sustainable, whereas the polystyrene and polypropylene both use petrochemicals, which take millions of years to form, and that is not sustainable. One of the big criticisms that we got was that this was going to put restaurants or businesses, under. It's going to hurt them, especially right now during this pandemic. I disagree. The reason I disagree is, for one, we can push back the start date of this to the beginning of 2022. We could put it back to the middle of 2021, and I hope the City Council takes that into consideration and does move things back as a way to help usher this through. But aside from that, the communities that have already done this, and I think it's about 47 or 48 communities that have already banned polystyrene, which is essentially styrofoam and some types of plastics, those businesses are not hurting, as some of the opponents have said. One of the criticisms I heard a lot was that Morin's restaurant will suffer if we do this. Well, Morin's is already using compostable and sustainable alternatives. Another one that people criticized was, they said, well, what about Banditos? That's a startup restaurant, and a startup restaurant might not fare as well as something like Morin's. And I talked to Benito, who is one of the owners of Banditos, and he was okay with it. He said that this is the direction we should be going in. It's the obvious direction. They will adapt to it. Dunkin' Donuts has already banned styrofoam cups, and then you have like big business icons like Ted Leach, part of Leach and Garner, and he said it very plainly that businesses adapt to changes, and nobody is going to be put out of business because of this. So other things in that ordinance proposal included banning the release of balloons into the air. We're not looking to be a party pooper. We are basically looking to stop the intentional release of balloons into the air. We want to prevent the distribution of light bulbs containing mercury in Attleboro, because mercury is not good in any quantities. This ordinance also looks to expand on the federal legislation that prohibits the use of plastic exfoliating beads in different types of cosmetic products. And also I submitted something to the council about neonics, which are pesticides that kill bees, but there is some state legislation that says that we may not be able to do that. So this was a comprehensive ordinance proposal trying to clean up the environment, protect the environment from a number of different ways. By reducing the number of these products in Attleboro will be better off. This proposal also included a ban on plastic nip bottles, and I would hope that the council would pass that and extend it to glass ones. Nip bottles are the small 50 milliliter or 60 milliliter bottles, typically something less than 100 milliliters. But these nip bottles are littered everywhere throughout the city. And unfortunately, one of the things that the council hearing focused on was the litter. But one of the things that we should still continue to be mindful of is that these plastic bottles are still using petrochemicals to produce them. They are also difficult to dispose of. They end up as litter. They're sometimes burned when they're thrown away or even put up for recycling. A lot of the opponents said that we should put a deposit on these things, and that would be the solution to everything. But a deposit isn't going to stop the littering. A deposit isn't going to stop the drinking and driving that goes on, and it's not going to stop the use of the petrochemicals that are used to produce these small bottles. So a deposit is not going to solve the multitude of problems that these nip bottles offer. So that was a pretty contentious issue that was discussed. The president of the Chelsea City Council called in to talk about the success they've had in Chelsea, and he very clearly stated that there wasn't all the doom and gloom that has been talked about by the opponents of this. The liquor stores adapt. The liquor stores, sometimes claim that as much as 10 or 20 or 30, 40% of their business is in nips or these miniatures or these shot bottles. And, when people are saying that 10, 20, 30, 40% of their business is that, when I hear ranges like that, I typically think of the saying that 71% of statistics are all made up on the spot. And I find it hard to believe that, that passes a sniff test. I mean, 40% of a liquor store's business is alleged to be these nip bottles. I would find that very hard to believe. I think that, more likely what they mean is that possibly 40% of the people who come in to buy other things, 40% of those people maybe purchase one as they were checking out. That would make more sense, but not 40%. So I don't even believe a lot of the testimony that was offered by the liquor industry. And the only people who spoke out in opposition to this were members of the liquor industry. It wasn't regular citizens. Regular citizens were speaking in support of this because they were disgusted by the number of nips that they are littered all over the city, and the drinking and driving and the use of the petrochemicals to make these bottles. One of the criticisms that the liquor industry had is that banning nips would not be the way to go, because we should use education campaigns, or the liquor industry will participate in a citywide cleanup. And I find that very disingenuous. I think that the liquor industry knows that there is a lot of alcoholism and a lot of drinking and driving going on, and they have not done anything to address this problem, and they have also not done anything to address the litter problem. But now on the 11th hour, when we're talking about eliminating the distribution of these products in the city, they suddenly come around and say that they're going to participate and help encourage an education campaign. Let's just think about that for a second. People know not to drink and drive. People know not to litter. People litter these nip bottles when they're drinking and driving because it makes for a convenience and it helps avoid detection, because you've quickly disposed of the physical evidence, outside of your car window. So I find it very disingenuous, and I think it's wishful thinking to think that the liquor industry is going to come in and help out with some type of education campaign that is going to stop drinking and driving, or it's going to stop littering. That's just not the reality of the mindset of a lot of people who are doing this. So I don't buy the efforts that they propose that they would suddenly help out. I think that we have seen other cases where they're basically trying to say, if we can implement this, then everything will be okay. It just doesn't work, and we know it doesn't work. Again, people know they're not supposed to litter. People know they're not supposed to drink and drive. And for the liquor industry to come in and say that they're going to promote programs that decrease littering or decrease drinking and driving, the people who are doing this, they don't care. They know what they're doing, and they know they're doing is wrong. And I don't really have much sympathy for that. So one of the criticisms of pretty much all of these is that people could go into other communities and bring those things here into Attleboro. And that's true, because we're not actually telling people that they cannot use these products. We're just telling commercial establishments that they may not distribute them, either as part of a sale or for sale themselves. But if other people bring things into Attleboro, that's going to happen. But by eliminating the distribution of these here, we're going to drastically reduce the amount of litter and waste that is happening in Attleboro, because these will no longer be available. That's only one aspect of it. The other aspect is the use of petrochemicals to make these products. These are largely plastic, and we want to basically send a message that this is something that Attleboro is serious about. We don't want to participate in this industry anymore. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for our health. It's not good for our children's future. So that's another aspect of it. And then the other aspect, the third aspect, is even though we are taking a stand here in Attleboro and other communities around us might not, we are joining the list of communities throughout the state who are taking a stand and sending a message to the state legislature that this is the direction we want the entire state to go in, which would then make it so that other surrounding communities would not be able to have these as well. Because these products are about convenience. They're not necessity. These are about convenience, and these things are not good for the environment, they're not good for our health, and they are not good for our future. One of the contentious ones was the use of plastic water bottles, and there have been probably about 18 communities in the state that have banned the use of plastic water bottles, that's single-use plastic water bottles. You might see those in Poland Springs or Evian, and there are a lot of people who are concerned about that because they seem to think that bottled water is healthier than tap water. The fact is that the bottled water industry has far fewer regulations and oversight on it than does tap water. Tap water is oftentimes what ends up in bottled water. Maybe sometimes there's a little bit of filtration, but bottled water is often 2,000 to 3,000 times more expensive than tap water. And we're also only seeking, with this bottled water ban, something that is less than 1 liter. Now, I know some people were concerned about the TTHM levels that we had here in Attleboro back in 2018. The reason that our TTHM levels were high and during that one testing period was because the water that particular year in the pipes was stagnant. When people were not using water as much, the chlorine in the water interacted with the naturally occurring organics in the water, and there's no way around that. Those two things are necessary, and that's what produced the TTHMs. The amount that we had here in our water supply a couple of years ago, you would need to consume that level for 70 years before it became a problem. So the level was actually so small that it was nothing that anybody should have to be worried about. Now, we have several programs that are going on within the water department to make Attleboro's water the cleanest and the best in the area. Right now, the city is participating with a pilot program with the State Department of Environmental Protection to measure PFAS. And our first measurement of PFAS showed that we are actually below the new state standard, and the new state standard is 20 parts per trillion. The old state standard was 70 parts per trillion, and the standard before that was 700 parts per trillion. Now, we are going to be participating in a program where we are measuring the type of PFAS that's coming in, and once we figure out what that looks like, we're going to invest in a filtration system so that way it filters all of that out. Now, that's something that the federal government doesn't require. The state of Massachusetts does require it, and right now we are actually at the forefront of a pilot program where not all the cities and towns in the state are even measuring what they're doing, but we took it upon ourselves to do that because we wanted to be at the front of the pack.
That's all for this week's edition of Attleboro Update. From everyone here at DoubleACS, thank you for watching.